Exclamation, everybody, and welcome back to the LiveCraftMine server. I hit a very high note even for myself right there. Hopefully I didn't blare out your eardrums there, because I saw the waveform peak go by there, and it was pretty epic. Pretty damn epic. So you're probably looking around going, what the hell are you doing, Memory? This is a caving episode? You didn't warn us that you were going to have a caving episode. Sorry. I know that they're not the most popular things in the world for Minecrafters to do, but they are a necessary evil, as everyone who plays the game knows. For me, this is actually a do-over. This is the second time I am doing this caving episode, not because of any technical problems, but more because of mental problems. I was very scatterbrained last night when I did this, and I was listening back to it, and it's quite painful, quite painful to listen to. So that's the thing. So what am I doing? What is the title of this? Why am I calling this a technical caving episode? Well, I thought, I know a couple of guys, and in fact, we have a lot of people online right now. Very cool. A couple of guys have told me, when I'm in live streams and whatnot, have asked me some technical questions, and I work as a software developer, not a game developer, so I don't know all the ins and outs of game development, although game development is what originally got me interested in software development. So I am familiar with some things. What they were saying, though, is that I really should do some kind of videos where I maybe go into depth about technical things of that nature. And I thought, it's not a bad idea. It's just there's sort of a caveat to the whole thing, and that is that all the information I'm about to give you could be wildly inaccurate and completely wrong. And it's just by the nature of me, right? Like I can look up technical things and I can read them and I can sort of understand them, but since I've never actually done them myself, namely I've never actually made a game myself, I can't speak to any experience, but I can at least try to parse a few things here and there, just based on my own knowledge. Wow, this ravine just keeps on giving here. So I found this ravine, as you saw in the sped up sequence, underneath, well, close to my farm, and you see this all this abandoned mine shaft up there. I'm kind of avoiding it because I've already done it in the episode that I threw away, so I know that it's pretty well explored. So I'm not going to try to explore it again, but I know there's a lot of these adjoining caves here that I would like to get my paws on. So what I'm thinking of doing here is every so often, just to break up the monotony of constantly building, and also because it's a necessity for me to get some resources, I decided that I'm going to do a caving episode, and when I do so, I'm going to pick some kind of technical topic. You feel free to ask me questions about future topics or suggest future topics in the comments, or you can hit me up on Twitter at MemoryLeakDeath. And from time to time I'll jump in here and I'll do my thing. So today I wanted to talk about something that might be somewhat familiar to people who have played Minecraft, though I'm sure that it's one of those menu items that you only kind of look at in passing and you never quite understand what it is. And it's something that sort of came into my attention recently, because I've been having, as I mentioned, lots of problems where Minecraft will just plain old crash on me. Usually after I've recorded a bunch of footage, and then, I get a hard crash. I have to cycle the power to get anything back, and of course in so doing that I lose whatever recording happened to be recording at the time, because it has not fully saved to disk. So what I've started to look at, I started to look at some of the different options in the video settings menu here, thinking that maybe one of them would help me out. And you'll notice I've been messing with the bitmap levels here. I've got it set to 2. Normally it's set to 4 for me, but you can set it in any kind of range you want between off and 4 there. And it sort of prompted me to think, hey, you know, since I understand this somewhat, it might be a good idea to sort of relay that information to others. It also happened to be a little bit funny aside here. I was just watching a little while ago the recent video from Good and Jay Sano, where they're playing on the Payday 2 map in Minecraft. And the author of that map had told, you know, in signs, had said, you know, make sure your bitmap levels are off and all that stuff. And they, of course, puzzlingly said, what the hell is that and where do I find it? So I thought, you know, that might be, since it's all sort of dovetailing into one another, it might be a good thing to kind of talk about a little bit. What the hell is mid-mapping? What does it mean? What does it do? That kind of thing. So, what the hell is... Ooh, hello. You're going to give me problems. I know it. Oh, yeah, he did. Or she did. Sorry. That's alright. It's a little bit of poison. Nothing too drastic. Alright. Very good. I will start this topic at some point here. It's almost a guarantee. How long is this poison? Oh, geez, Louise. All right. So what are bitmapping? Well, it's a technique in computer graphics mostly that game developers employ to sort of improve the performance or attempt to improve the performance of their games for lower end systems. Number one. And number two, it's also to improve the quality or the perceived quality of the graphics in the game. Now, for those of you who've played Minecraft back in the old betas, come on, guy, get a death job. There we go. For those of you like me who've played Minecraft back in the old betas, you probably noticed a bunch of graphical upgrades. And there's one that you probably might notice but not quite realize that you've noticed it. And that is the bitmapping stuff. And I'll use this gravel as an example here. If I go into the menu and I turn off bitmapping, this essentially puts me back into the old beta engine mode here, right? I will see what I would have seen in this scene from beta. And you're like, yeah, you're looking around like, I don't really see the difference until I start walking around. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, what is that? If you keep your eye on the gravel and on the dirt, you'll see it most. You'll see the most of it. You're saying, oh, what is that? What is that flickering? What is that? What is that noise that I see there? And that is what is sort of resolved by having the bitmapping turned on. So you'll see if I turn it back on here, turn it back to 2 like I had, and after it refreshes, you see now right away you can see it's a lot smoother. It looks a lot smoother. You're going, what is the purpose behind that? What does that do? How does that accomplish that, I should say? And it accomplishes it by essentially, well, first of all, let me take a step back. I'm starting to get scatterbrained again. That noise pattern that you saw there, that texture popping, as a lot of people call it, you know, they'll say, oh, the textures are popping a little bit. That is, the technical term for it is moire. It's like a moire pattern. And I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I may not be. It's a French word. And I've never taken French, so there you go. That is a guy trying his best to pronounce something. That pattern is because if you've ever been in a paint program, say you have a picture that you've taken with your phone, as I eat some chicken here, and you're in a paint program, and you're examining it, and you decide, oh, I'm gonna change the dimensions of this. I'm going to shrink it down from its original size. And you'll notice if you shrink it down enough, if you don't maintain the original dimensions, if you shrink it down enough, it starts to get very squished and very hard to make out patterns in it. It's not as crisp and clean as it used to be when it was at the full resolution. That same thing happens all the time as you walk around in Minecraft. So for instance, if I look at, say, that pillar of stone right there, from this distance, what has happened is that is I should probably point this out. This texture here, right? This is a 16 by 16 texture. I believe that's the default for Minecraft. 16 by 16. It might be even 32 by 32, but I believe it's 16 by 16 if I remember correctly. So what happens is when I'm far away from something like that pillar there, that texture is still 16 by 16. It's just being shrunk as it goes further out in perspective by the engine. And as I walk up towards it, it starts to grow and expand and become its normal high-res, quote-unquote, high-res texture. When I turned the mid mapping off, you saw things that were further away from me had that sort of very noisy pattern to them. And that is due to the fact that it took the 16 by 16 texture and it shrunk it down so that it would fit in the block that is now, 5 or 10 blocks away from me, instead of being right next to me where I can see it in its full glory. And that noise is due to that. It's very similar if you were to take your own picture, put it in, Photoshop or Paint or whatever, and try to manipulate it, but go and shrink it down and put it onto a postage stamp or something like that. You'll see that same pattern sort of emerge. The only reason it's more visible in a computer game like this is because you're constantly moving. It's constantly, as I move around, the things that are far away from me are growing larger, and the things behind me are growing smaller. And so that's why it becomes, much more visible that there's noise there. So the mip mapping, its whole goal in life is to sort of reduce that noise, as you saw. So as I'm walking around, it's not so distracting. I don't see that popping constantly in my face everywhere I look. It makes it look a little bit more professional. It makes it look a little bit nicer. It accomplishes this by basically the developers, Mojang in this case, went and took their high-res textures, their 16 by 16 or 32 by 32, I'm not sure which size it is, and they made smaller, reduced versions of them and packaged them up with the normal textures. So, in other words, wherever there's a 16 by 16 texture, like this stone texture, there's also a 8 by 8 stone texture, a 4 by 4 stone texture, and a 2 by 2 stone texture. And I think, so it was only 4 levels. I think that's 4 right there. And that way, what happens is, in the engine, they have an algorithm that will say, okay, based upon my distance from this stone block, determine what texture I should see there. Should I see the full 16 by 16 texture, or should I see the smaller 4 by 4 or 8 by 8 texture? And then as I walk around, the game is, swapping these textures in and out as I go due to the mip mapping algorithm, and thus making it appear much smoother and much less noise to everything. I'll try not to repeat that anymore because I'm finding myself repeating words quite often here because I'm trying to get everything sort of out there and understandable, and that's not always the easiest thing for me to do, especially as a developer, as a programmer. So the different levels of mip mapping, when you say, okay, well, what's 2 levels of mip mapping? Well, 2 levels of mip mapping basically means I'm basically telling the computer, only load 2 different textures. The high-res 16 by 16 texture and a middle ground, so probably 8x8 more than likely. And then everything else is just an extension of that. So as I get close to something, it becomes a 16x16. Things that are further away are the 8x8, but they're just shrunk down. So it reduces some of the noise, but I'm still getting a little bit more than somebody with it set to 4 would have. It's not quite as visible here. It's much more visible when you have a large repeating texture. Like for instance, if I look at my silo out in the world there, you'd see it much more pronounced in that. So based on the level you pick is how many optimizations you're saying to do. Now all of that takes obviously processing power. So if you're a lot of these guys that are on the server here, you've probably turned off your mip mapping altogether just to save whatever few frames you possibly can in calculations. Now, I did say earlier on that its original intention was to help out those with slower computers, right? Because it's allowing the engine to swap in lower res textures that are further away, so that it's not doing all the translations that are necessary for those images, for those texture images. And that is true to a certain extent. It really depends on how good the algorithm is that they're using. In the case of Minecraft, I believe having it set to 4 when you have when you have a rather slower computer is probably okay. It's probably helping out a lot. But it's something it's something that you have to sort of play with at some point to see if that's actually true or not. It really depends on your GPU and whether or not it's actually optimizing stuff. If you were using software rendering instead of the hardware GPU, then yeah, it's something you would definitely want to turn off because you're already suffering pretty good for your hobby. Hey guy, oh you're just gonna stand there, huh? So then that brings us into something else that there's two other things that you might see in AAA games and other games of the nature that are 3D that are also related to mip mapping, but you've probably never understood what they mean. And one of those is called trilinear filtering. There's also bilinear filtering, by the way. Trilinear filtering is another technique that is applied to the actual mip maps to make them appear a little bit nicer. So, for instance, a basic algorithm for swapping in mip maps would be at distance 5 or so from me, swap in the next level of detail, or the next mip map. Sorry, I was using the wrong terminology again. Swap in the next mip map, which is jarring, right? Excuse me. Can be jarring, depending on what angles you're looking at stuff. If you're looking at it straight on, you probably wouldn't tell. But if you're looking at it from an angle, it's a little bit more noticeable. And one of the nice things about Minecraft is one of the things that you can see it most clearly in the rails here. You can see all that blurriness off in there. That is the mip mapping at its work. The rail that's furthest away from me is at its lowest resolution, and the one closest to me is at the highest resolution, or damn near close to it, highest texture. Yes, I am recording. So what else? Oh, when you let me let me get my words here for a second. Everybody's gonna have something to say now. So I was talking about the trilinear filtering, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got through all of this stuff here, though. That was a dangerous jump. I don't know why I did that. That was rather stupid. Yeah, I've been through all this place. So let's see if we can find some more caves here. So the trilinear filtering is just another algorithm that makes it look a little bit better. So instead of just swapping things in on the fly like that, it might swap in partials. It tries to do an interpolation, what's called interpolation, between the different textures. So instead of just doing a boldface swap as soon as you get to a certain distance from it, it will try to sort of combine the two, the lower resolution texture and the higher resolution texture, in such a way that it looks a little bit more natural. It looks a little less, it's a little less jarring as you walk around. There's another technique that's a little bit more advanced that makes for an even better picture. And this one you've almost definitely heard of. It's called anisotropic filtering. I'm sure you've probably gone through the advanced menus at some point of some game and saw, you know, anisotropic filtering in there, and probably saw like 4 times or 16 times or 8 times and so on and so forth. That is just like trilinear filtering, except it's a different, or it has the same purpose as trilinear filtering. It just has it's a different algorithm for doing it. So in other words, instead of looking at the entire picture, the entire texture, and trying to swap in the entire texture and make it look good, it'll look at just each line of the texture and say, okay, based upon what angle I'm looking at, if I'm looking at something from an oblique angle like this, right, it will look at each line of the texture and go, okay, this one up here is further away from the viewer than this line down here. So this line down here will be in the full resolution of that whatever texture has already swapped in, and this one up here will be at a lower res texture. And it just kind of does that to try to make it so that when you're looking at something from a very steep angle, which I can't really do in Minecraft because it's all blocks, but when you're looking at something from a very steep angle, it helps to have the anisotropic filtering on there, because it will make it, again, look a little bit more natural as you're doing it. So there's one more thing that goes hand in hand with all this stuff, and this is what I was getting confused with in my last recording, which is why I went back and just did my own homework a little bit and wanted to come back in and re-record this so that I was a little bit more accurate. Although I want to say, just as a disclaimer, if you are interested in any of this information that I am putting forth to your ears, please do not take what I say as gospel. Please go off and you know, do your own Google searching and look up on Wikipedia and so on and so forth. You know, educate thyself. You'll learn it a lot better than you will just by listening to me ramble on while I try to mine for some resources. So the one more thing that I wanted to say that's sort of related to all that stuff is level of detail. Sorry, I was going to say field of view, but it's not. It's level of detail. And you're probably asking yourself, well, what's the difference? Isn't level of detail exactly what you just described? I mean, isn't it swapping textures in and all that stuff? No, and this is where I got a little confused myself. It's not. Level of detail, it has the same purpose, which is to say things that are further away from you are optimized in the engine by removing some detail, and also, you know, while maintaining, removing detail while maintaining a nice visual look and feel. The difference is that where mip mapping relates to textures, entirely to textures, level of detail relates entirely to geography. So, for instance, everything in Minecraft is a cube. Pretty much everything in Minecraft is a cube. Entities and whatnot are specialized models, but for the most part, everything is, relatively speaking, all the blocks and whatnot are cubes. If you think about, so it's very, very, very simple in that regard, from a geography perspective. If you think about some other games, some other 3D games that are out there on the market, like your Doom, well, not Doom, but your I'm going old school here by saying Doom, your Call of Duties and stuff like that. They have far more complex shapes in their character models and in their worlds and whatnot. So they have far more polygons and whatnot that are being drawn of various shapes on the screen. So they might employ something like level of detail, which basically says things that are far away from you. Oh, I had a feeling I wasn't going to make that jump. Things that are far away from you get less polygons devoted to them, less geography devoted to them, because they don't require as much detail because they're far away from you, and it also helps to increase the performance of the rendering engine, just like bitmapping helps to increase the performance of Minecraft, generally speaking. So level of detail is pretty much the same thing as bitmapping, except rather than dealing with textures, it's dealing with the actual polygons that make up a model. And low poly models are usually the ones that are very far away. So for instance, a typical, say, hero model, right? That's NPC model that's really close to you might have on order of, we'll say, 20,000 polygons that make up it. 20,000 individual polygons. A NPC that is, say, 500 meters away from you, we'll say, his model would typically have the same 20,000 polygons, except the engine looks at it and goes, wait, this guy is so far away that you're not going to be able to see the freckles on his face. So let's swap in a lower polygon count model. And so that model that's 500 meters away might only have 20 or 30 polygons in it, which is a lot easier to render, as you might imagine, than 20,000. A lot more performant to render than 20,000. Oh yeah, that's where I got frustrated and left the cave last time. So that sort of explains the little bit of the technology behind computers. And next time you're looking at a menu and you're trying to figure out what all these visual settings are, you might actually be able to speak to some of them, or at least be able to be intrigued enough to go out and look and find good resources, far better resources than me, that describe this in better detail and far more accurate detail. Have I disclaimed myself enough? that is the ultimate question. Okay, cool. I think that'll just about do it for this little caving episode and expedition. Whoa, hello. There's more cave to be explored here. Lots of mushrooms there that are illuminating. We got ourselves a mushroom path. Hello. Got ourselves a mushroom path here that I will probably follow at some point. Hey guy, how are you? I saw some gold over here, I believe. Yep, indeed I did. Cool. I believe the guys are chomping at the bit to have me join them on a Skype call. So I will be doing that very shortly here. I just wanted to sort of wrap up this episode and version 2. I want to sort of wrap up this episode and have it ready to go for you guys, because I tried this, as I said, last night, and I felt like it didn't come out well. I wasn't very coherent for whatever reason. It's just every so often it just happens. You know, you're not feeling it, even though you're happy and you know it. It's just not. Your brain is all over the place, as mine tends to be. So I'm going to find my way out of here. Next episode, hopefully, I've bought myself enough time to go out and get some further resources and get some further building done, and we'll spend some time probably around the farm, if not at the library. And oh, by the way, just as a side note, I have my 6th death. That is why I don't have my diamond picks anymore, because I lost all my diamond stuff. This sword I just happened to make because the last episode that I just recorded, that I'm throwing the recording away for, I found 3 diamond in that mine shaft that we just saw. So that is where that came from. I am a poor man again, but I'll be making some progress. So that's why I really need this caving, and I kind of want to, talk with you guys a little bit. So before I continue rambling on any further, thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time.